Hello, everyone. This is Suzanne at The Gospel Truth. Today is Friday, November 17th. Wow. My daughter called me last night and she said, Mom, Adam, that's my grandson, has COVID. I said, What? She says, Yeah, and his dad has it too. And I said, Oh, no. So they're keeping an eye on things. He's not going to return back to work till Monday. It's very alarming when you hear that a loved one has COVID, but we know that he is in God's hands and we're praying that everything will be okay. He does have asthma, which complicates things in his case. So it's a time of year, just like the flu. I guess this is the time of year that people would get COVID. So, and they've all been vaccinated. They've all had like 3 shots each and they still get COVID. So they are waiting out to see if my daughter's going to get it, or Kevin, or my other grandson, Tyler. If they get it, we'll be canceling Thanksgiving because we do not want to spread this around. I don't want to get COVID again. I had it once and that was enough for me. It lasted like 2 or 3 months. It was horrible. So that wasn't such great news, but we'll all get through it one way or another. We have been reading Corrie Ten Boom, The Hiding Place. This is about her life story, and I am so thankful that Corrie decided to share her journey in life with us so it would strengthen our faith. It would give us courage to face whatever we might be going through. I dare say there's none of us that will go through what this woman and many others have faced in their lives, and that their faith remained strong and they came out it better and stronger on the other side. We are in chapter 4 called The Watchshop. I read the chapter and it's further storyline of her life. We know that Carl, the man she thought was going to be her husband forever, well, he married someone else, and because in his family, they made sure that their children married well. They were well-to-do. And we talked about, I think Carl fantasized about what life would have been like with Corrie, and that he might have really liked that. I think he really did love her, but he knew it would kill his mother if he would marry just a commoner, or even below a commoner. All right, let's get on with chapter 4. Not long after the visit from Carl, Mama had a stroke. For 2 months she lay unconscious in a bed while we took turns at her side. And then one morning her eyes opened and she looked around her. Eventually she regained the use of her arms and legs, enough to be able to move about with assistance, though her hands would never again hold her knitting needles. That kind of stood out with me, that how many of us can't knit or crochet anymore because of arthritis in our hands or for whatever reason it is. And I think when those type of things happen, we need to redirect our focus on something else, whatever it may be, and our ability to do it. We moved her to Tan Jan's front room, where she could watch the busy life of the street. Her mind was active as ever, but the power of speech did not return, with the exception of 3 words: yes, no, and Corrie. Now, Mama called everybody Corrie. It was astonishing, though, the quality of life she was able to lead in that crippled body. Watching her during the 3 years of her paralysis, I made another discovery about love. Mama's love had always been the kind that acted itself out with soup pot and sewing basket. Now that these things were taken away, she sat in her chair at the window and loved us. She loved the people she saw in the street and beyond. I learned that love is larger than the walls that shut us in. Isn't that the truth? Nowly's conversation at the dinner table was more and more about a young fellow teacher at the school where she taught, Flip Van Woerden. Eventually, the young man called on Father to ask for Nolly's hand in marriage, and there was a Ten Boom wedding. Nolly was radiant that day in her long white dress, but it was Mama I could not take my eyes off. She seemed young and girlish, eyes sparkling with joy at this great occasion. Betsy and I took her into the church early, and I believe that most of the Van Woerden family and friends never dreamed the gracious and smiling lady in the front pew could neither walk alone or speak. Not until Nolly and Flip came down the aisle together did I think for the first time of my own dreams of such a moment with Carl. I glanced at Betsy, so tall and lovely. Betsy had always known that, because of her health, she could not have children, and for that reason she decided never to marry. Now I was 27, Betsy was in her mid-30s, and I knew that this was the way it was going to be, Betsy and I, the unmarried daughters living at the home in the BG. It was a happy thought, not a sad one. I knew for certain that God had answered my prayer 4 years ago, because with the thought of Carl came not the slightest trace of hurt. Bless Carl, Lord Jesus, I murmured under my breath, and bless her. Keep them close to one another and to you. I knew that was a prayer that could not have sprung unaided from Corrie Ten Boom. In other words, without the help of God, she probably wouldn't have even said that prayer. But God can help us overcome many things in our lives, even especially the bad, hurtful things. I took some numbing concoction for my throat and my stomach with Maalox and the Lanacane, and so I may be swallowing a little bit more today, but we'll get through this. I'm really enjoying reading these chapters. Okay. I think that Lanacane makes my nose even run a little bit more. I don't know, but my goodness. All right. In November that year, Betsy had begun to sniff and sneeze. Father decided she must not sit behind the cashier's table where the shop door let the winter air in. But Christmas was coming, the shop's busiest time. Tandy Anna insisted she could cook and look after Betsy. So I settled in behind Betsy's table, writing down sales and repair charges, recording cash spent for parts and supplies, and leafing through records in growing disbelief. There was no system here anywhere, no way to tell whether a bill had been paid, no way, in fact, to tell if we were making money or losing it. Of course, Father was as innocent of business know-how as his father had been before him. He would work for days on a difficult repair problem and then forget to send a bill. The more rare the watch, the less he was able to think of money. A man should pay for the privilege of working on such a watch, he would say. One day, I bought a new set of ledgers. Many nights after the door was locked, I sat for hours poring over inventories and statements. I developed a system of billing, and more my columns of figures began to correspond to actual transactions. I discovered that I loved it. I had always felt happy in this little shop with its tiny voices and shelves of small shining faces, but now I discovered that I liked the business side of it too, the world of trade. I knew that Betsy's cold had settled in her chest and threatened to turn into pneumonia, as her colds always did. I would reproach myself for being anything but distressed at the present arrangement. At night, when I would hear her racking cough, I would pray with all my heart for her to be better at once. Then one evening, 2 days before Christmas, when I had closed the shop up for the night, Betsy came bursting in from the alley with her arms full of flowers. Her eyes, when she saw me, were like a guilty child's. "For Christmas, Corrie," she pleaded. "We have flowers for Christmas." "Betsy!" I exploded. "No wonder you're not getting any better." "I've stayed in bed most of the time, honestly." She stopped while a great cough shook her. "I've only got up for really important things." I put her to bed and then prowled the rooms with newly opened eyes, looking for Betsy's important things. Betsy had made beautiful changes everywhere. things that would have never occurred to me, things that would make a home. It became obvious that we had divided the work backward. Once we swapped responsibilities, it was astonishing how well everything went. The house had been clean under my care, but under Betsy's it glowed. The food budget, which had barely survived my visits to the butcher and baker, stretched under Betsy's management to include all kinds of delicious things. The soup kettle and the coffee pot on the back of the stove, which I never seemed to find time for, were simmering again the first week Betsy took over, and soon a stream of postmen and police, wobbly old men, and shivering errand boys were pausing inside our alley door to cup their hands around hot mugs, just as they'd done when Mama was in charge. Meanwhile, I found joy in my work I had never dreamed of. I realized I wanted to do even more. I wanted to learn watch repair itself. Father eagerly took on the job of teaching me. I quickly learned the parts, the tools, and the techniques, and I became the first licensed woman watchmaker in Holland. Way to go, Betsy. So was established the pattern of our lives were to follow for over 20 years. When Father had put the Bible away after breakfast, he and I went downstairs to the shop while Betsy plotted magic with 3 potatoes and a pound of meat. With my eyes on income and outlay, the shop did better. We were able to hire a sales lady for the front room while Father and I worked in the back. There was a constant procession through this little back room. Sometimes it was a customer. Most often it was simply a visitor, from a laborer with a wooden clompin on his feet to a business owner, all bringing their problems to Father. Often he would bow his head and pray for the answer. He prayed over the work too, but there were not many repair problems he had not encountered. But occasionally, one would come along and even baffle him. I could hear him say, "Lord, you turn the wheels of the galaxies. You know what makes the planets spin, and you know what makes this watch run." The answer to these prayers seemed often to come in the night. Many mornings I would find the watch that we had left in 100 pieces, fitted together and ticking merrily. Even before Tandy Anna's death, the empty beds in the BG were filled with a succession of foster children, who for over 10 years kept the old walls ringing with laughter. William and Nolly were having families. William and Tyne, 4 children, Nolly and Flip, 6. William had started his nursing home in Hilversum, 30 miles from Harlem. Nolly's family we saw more often, as their school, of which Flip was now principal, was in Harlem. Most days, one or another of the 6 was at BG to visit Opa at his workbench, or peer into Tam Betsy's mixing bowl, or race up and down the winding steps with the foster children. We first discovered young Peter's musical gift around our radio, a large table model with an ornate shell-shaped speaker that brought us many years of joy. One Sunday afternoon, when Nolly and her family were listening to a concert with us, Peter spoke up in the middle of a Brahms concerto. "It's funny they put a bad piano on the radio." "What do you mean, Peter?" asked Father. "One of the notes is wrong." The rest of us exchanged glances. What could an 8-year-old know? But Father led the boy to Tan Jen's old upright. "Which note, Peter?" Peter struck the keys up the scale till he reached B above middle C. "This one." Then everyone in the room heard it. The B on the concert piano was flat. I spent the rest of the afternoon beside Peter on the piano bench, uncovering a phenomenal musical talent. Peter became my music student until, in about 6 months, he had learned everything I knew and went on to more expert teachers. Life for Father, Betsy, and me stayed essentially the same. Our foster children grew up and went away to jobs or to marry. The 100th anniversary came and went. The following day, Father and I were back at our workbenches, as always. Even the people we passed on our daily walks were perfectly predictable. I went with Father on his daily stroll through the downtown streets. We took our walks always at the same time, after the midday dinner, and before the shop reopened at 2, and always over the same route. Since other Harlemers were just as regular in their habits, We knew exactly whom we would meet. Many of those we nodded to were old friends or customers. Others we knew only from the daily encounter. Father tipped his hat to all. When Harlem and the rest of Holland strolled and bowed and swept its steps, the neighbors on our east geared for war. We knew what was happening. Often on the radio we would pick up a voice from Germany, a voice that only screamed. Who does that bring to mind? Hitler. He's always screaming. Even-tempered Betsy reacted most strongly, hurtling from her chair to shut off the radio. But when letters to Jewish suppliers in Germany came back marked address unknown, we still believed that it was primarily a German problem. How long are they going to stand for it, we asked. They won't put up with that man for long. Wow, little did they know. Once the changes in Germany reached inside our little shop, Germans frequently came to work under Father for a while, for his reputation reached beyond Holland. So when a good-looking young man appeared with apprentice papers from a good firm in Berlin, Father hired him without hesitation. Otto told us proudly that he belonged to the Hitler Youth. The world will see what Germans can do, he said often. That doesn't sound too good, does it? Otto's first morning at work, he came upstairs for coffee and Bible reading with the other employees. After that, he sat alone down in the shop. When we asked him why, he said that Father was reading from the Old Testament, which, he informed us, was the Jews' book of lies. I was shocked, but Father was only sorrowful. He has been taught wrong, he told me, but by watching us, seeing that we love this book and we are truthful people, he will realize his error. In the end, Father fired Otto, the first employee he had ever discharged in more than 60 years in business. It was Otto's treatment of the old clock mender, Christophels, that brought it about. From the very first, I had been baffled by his abruptness with the old man. It was not what he did, but what he did not do. No standing back to let the older man go first. No picking up a dropped tool. It was hard to pin down. One Sunday, when Father, Betsy, and I were having dinner at Hilversum, I commented on what I concluded was thoughtlessness. William shook his head. It's deliberate, he said. It's because Christophers is old. The old have no value to the state. They're also harder to train in the new ways of thinking. Germany is teaching disrespect for old age. We could not grasp such a concept. Surely you are mistaken, William, Father said. Otto is extremely courteous to me, and I'm a good deal older than Christophels. You're the boss. That's another part of this system, respect for authority. The old and the weak are to be eliminated. I would be shocked to hear that. We started watching Otto more closely. But how could we know? How could we have guessed that it was in the streets and alleys outside that Otto was subjecting Christophers to a very real persecution? Accidental trippings, a shove, a heel ground into a toe, were making the old clockman's journey to and from work times of terror. Christophers was too proud to report any of this to us. Only when one morning he stumbled into the dining room with a bleeding cheek did the truth come out. Even then, Christophers said nothing. But running down the street to retrieve his hat, I encountered Otto surrounded by an indigent cluster of people who had seen what had happened. The young man had forced the older one into the side of the building and ground his face against the rough bricks. Father tried to reason with Otto as he let him go, to show him why such behavior was wrong. Otto did not answer. He collected a few tools he had brought with him and left the shop. At the door he turned to us briefly with a look of utter contempt. Wow. So now we're starting to get a clue as to what might be coming in Corrie's life, which we know. But treating another person like that just because they're old, that they have nothing left to give, people that are sick and weak, and believing that the Old Testament was a book of lies, and Germany was very communistic. And William warned about this way back, and William keeps telling them it's deliberate. They have no value to the state, and they're teaching disrespect for old age. They're teaching that our Bible is a book of lies. And I think it was hard for Corrie's father to let him go, but he was trying to tell him why such behavior was wrong. Of course, it fell on deaf ears. And can you just imagine the look that Otto gave as he left? Of just glaring disrespect and anger and vileness. I've seen people give that look of utter contempt, and it hurts. It hurts the heart, because how sad these people are. So we will pick up again tomorrow, Lord willing, which is Saturday, chapter 5. It may not be till Monday. I'll see how I'm feeling over the weekend. I may rest a couple of days and pick back up on Monday, but we'll see. Now, when we come back, we will be chapter 5, called Invasion. And that doesn't sound too good, does it? You know, Corrie sounds like she grew up in a home with much love. Her parents opened their home to many children that lived there until they moved out, got married. They gave soup, probably bread, to a lot of people that stood at their back door. They loved everybody. They loved God with all their heart, mind, and soul. And now we're going to further read exactly what happens when the Nazis come. You know, when you've lived a life, and especially her father's older, much older now, and when you've seen a lot of things, and it sounds like Corrie's dad tried to bring out the best in people until they either rejected it and he had let Otto go, or they accepted it. But I think a lot of people love this family for their generosity. Her mom was extremely generous and kind of heart. And they taught Corrie and her sister. It was Corrie, Betsy, Nally, and William were their children. And they raised their children right in the Word of God. And I'm sure that all those things they were taught in the future are going to come back to them, that knowledge. I thought about the scripture where the hiding place, you are my hiding place. It's in Psalms. And I think when we run back to God, God says, hide here in my word. Remember my word. I am your hiding place. I will instruct you in the ways that you should go. And I think there's different times during our life that we need to do that, because nothing else will help. We don't know what to do, where to go, who to talk to. We need to always go back to the hiding place and talk to God and know that He loves us very much and He's there for us, whatever stages of life we are in. So I hope you've enjoyed this chapter. Thank you for stopping by and listening. I am going to do the Ephesians study in a little while for today. And then I think I'm just going to sit back and do some crocheting. I know today is Friday. I have Friday makes, but I didn't get anything done this week because I have not been feeling good. So hopefully this next week I'll be able to crank out some more things. All right, God bless you all. Again, thank you for spending a portion of your time with me today. God bless you. Bye-bye.